Right then. Hello, good evening, good morning, and welcome. My name is Paul. I'm also called Knickknack, and I'm the brains behind several things that are sometimes relevant and sometimes not. I'm the brains behind Knickknack's Old Peculiar, the world's most boringly repetitive blog. I'm also the guy behind the YouTube channel at Mr. Cuddy2977, and I do the daily teaser quiz on both my blog and my YouTube channel, and I do TV reviews and movie reviews. It's at the time of recording, it's Sunday the 26th, and I've recently seen 28 years later, and I wanted to tell you what I thought. 28 years later opens after the first two films have finished, and opens to show us a small group of children gathered around a TV watching an old videotaped episode of Teletubbies. They're quietly watching this until the children's carer runs into the room and tells them to be very still, very quiet, and not to move, as the castle the children are hiding in is attacked by the infected who have swarmed over the UK since the events of the first film. Most of these hidden children are killed, with one exception. One quick exception, Jimmy, Rocco Haynes, managing to flee the castle and escape to find his doomed father, only to see his dad overwhelmed. The screen fades to darkness as we're shown a series of intertitles, written slide that tells us of how the rage virus hit the UK, but driven from the European continent, and how the quarantined UK survivors are left to fend for themselves. The last side simply says, 28 years later. The darkness lifts to show us a tattered St. George's Cross flying over a small village on an isolated island. An isolated island and village where Spike, Alfie Williams, is being awoken by his father Jamie, Aaron Taylor Johnson, in preparation for what Jamie calls Spike's big day. As do the rest of the islanders when the pair head for the village gates. Gates that lead to the mainland, a mainland where Jamie will be teaching his nervous son how to kill the infected. That is going to be quite a job. So, what did I think? What did I think of the tea? That was nice. And of 28 years later, of a very delayed sequel. As a first point, the older I get, the more long movies, ones over 90 minutes or so, are something I find harder to cope with. I find I have less patience for them. I'll be honest, I got halfway through 28 Years Later's last night, or the other night, when I got bored, and I decided to take a break, enough of a break to boil the kettle, play a quick game of Tetris or two, read a brief news article, pour hot water into a mug with a tea bag and milk, go to the loo, and then fish the tea bag out of the mug whilst washing my hands. I found that made for a suitable breather, alongside putting the used tea bag in the bin. After that was done, after I'd stepped back for a few minutes, I went back to the movie with a certain amount of lifted spirits, and also thinking that an old school intermission was a good idea, and that the film's producers could have put that in, a title card with intermission in the film, or have shaved off 15 to 20 minutes off the film. As a second point, I don't know that the film's length is necessarily the problem. I think possibly the pacing is the issue. 28 Days Later, the original film, and 28 Years Later are similar lengths. Days is an hour and 53 minutes, according to my records, and Years is some 2 minutes longer. And the original 28 Days Later, to me, seemed something far better and faster paced. It plays out over nearly 2 hours, but felt like 90 minutes. Granted, it's a while since I've seen it, but compared to 28 Years Later, it felt far better paced. It felt like 90 minutes, 28 years later, felt like a film that played out over 2.25 hours. Yes, before you ask me, I think director Danny Boyle and the rest of the crew could have put in a touch more work there. There's possibly more I could say there, but that's maybe something for later. There's a few other things to chew on in amongst everything else. For one thing, the performances. You've heard of Chekhov's gun, haven't you? It's an idea originally ascribed to Anton Chekhov, the playwright, that says that every plot element has to be used. Nothing can be wasted. So if you're shown a gun at the start of a story, it has to be fired by the end of it, either by or at the main characters for preference. The gun in this film is simply the character of Jimmy, the youngster we see at the start of the film, who then crops up as an older man, played by Jack O'Connell. O'Connell does his usual sterling, wonderful, lovely, super terrific job for the 5 or so minutes he's in the film. From the little I know, though, Jimmy will probably play a big part in 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, which is the next film in the series due for release early in 2026. Wouldn't mind seeing it so far. The ensemble cast as a whole, though, were incredibly strong. As strong, certainly, as the cast in Star Trek Strange New World. They do like to put a good, strong cast together for those shows. It's so strong, in fact, it's downright superb. Ralph Fiennes, for example, as a sympathetic Dr. Kelson, caught my attention. He is something to watch. He's covered in iodine, seemingly giving him a blood-soaked appearance. It contrasts with his very compassionate nature and the kindly way the character treats his patients. There is no other word but superb for that performance. Aaron Taylor-Johnson as the emotionally cold father Jamie was just as striking. Really was just as striking. The real stars of the show, though, however big I may choose to big up Taylor-Johnson and Fiennes, the real star of the shows were Jodie Comer as the cancer-ridden Isla and Alfie Williams, Spike, the main character of the show. Williams puts in a very world-weary, scared, decisive, innocent, wise performance rolled up into one hell of a package. I can only hope his career goes on for longer because it strikes me he's quite a talented lad. Something else that struck me with 28 Years Later was simply the world building. I always think competently done world building is a must for any story or series of stories, whether that's a film, a book, a TV show, or a radio show. From the little I know, give you an example, the Marvel movies are extensively backstoried and cross-referenced. The world building, they have to keep it spot on. Tolkien's Middle-earth and Terry Pratchett's Discworld are both very well developed. EastEnders is reasonably coherent and, again, very extensively double-checked. The Star Trek franchise and the Hooniverse are all reasonably well delivered after the 60-odd years they've been going, even if they are a little contradictory in parts. Doctor Who's destroyed Atlantis at least twice, give you an example. The other example I think of here is Radio 4's The Archers. It's got an entire back office and possibly 2 or 3 dedicated to the show's history and continuity and geography. Apparently there's quite a few maps of the relevant bits of farmland. So world building is, as they show, quite important, both for long-term success and internal consistency, and for a story to be convincing. Does this apply here, Paul? I hear you say. Yes, it bloody does. 28 Years Later has to follow the pre-established rules from the earlier films and does so well. The rage virus itself is spread by blood from the infected, so as a logical consequence of lots of infected around, mainland Britain has been isolated from disease-free Europe. And the island community itself, the one Spike, Jamie, and Isla are part of, is equally as isolated. The villagers can only get to and from the mainland via a causeway that's exposed at low tide. The opening shot was actually quite disturbing. It reminded me of Auschwitz and the rail lines you see into the concentration camps. That's possibly a whole other discussion there. But while the infected are as isolated as the villagers, they've also had logical changes. There's fat ones who move slowly. There's emaciated, skinny ones called fast ones who are fast. And there's an alpha, a dominant male called Samson, played by Chi Lewis Parry, who's got the habit of ripping the heads and spinal columns off of his victim. He literally pulls the heads off with the spinal column still attached. It's quite a nasty piece of work. But even given that, even given we know he's a nasty piece of work, we know Dr. Kelson, or we see that Dr. Kelson can stop Samson in his tracks. So he's something to be wary of, but he's not necessarily as frightening as he could be. The thing I found frightening in what is a horror film notionally, the thing I found truly shocking, one of the infected was pregnant and gave birth. That was quite frightening to watch. There are other elements of the film's world building. I mentioned that Spike's village is on an island off Britain's coast and can only be reached at low tide. Its name's never spoken in the film, but you can see references in posters and banners the villagers have up to the Holy Island mission. I almost immediately recognised the name as that of Lindisfarne. It's the other name for Lindisfarne. It's possibly one of the holiest sites in the country, as it's housed some sort of monastic community since the 7th century. It, like the rest of the settings used, looks utterly wild and utterly bloody gorgeous. Even with the digital enhancements Boyle's camera crew used, the scenery is just eye-wateringly beautiful. Outside of that, in terms of the story, our characters having their home in this beautiful part of the world makes sense in the context of the story, because the villagers are there, have isolated themselves on this island to keep themselves safe, although whether that's from the infected or the likes of Dr. Kelson, the normal uninfected humans on the mainland, humans who may be able to help, whether they're safe from one or the other is a whole other matter. Make of that what you will. So, with all of that out of the way, what did I make of 28 Years Later? It has got to be said, 28 Years Later is a very well-made film. The acting from Comer, Fiennes and young Alfie Williams in particular was well done. Extremely well done. The effects, the CGI inserts are all, again, extremely good. Acting to enhance the gorgeous scenery of northeastern England rather than hide it. It's a very well-written story that is well acted, well told, and beautiful to look at. My only concerns are twofold. The infected have been changed slightly. If I recall the extras that came with the DVD version of the original film of 28 Days Later, the infected were filmed on digital cameras set to a possibly slower frame rate, so that when the footage was edited into the finished film and played at a normal frame rate, the infected would look like they were moving faster than an uninfected human. They literally looked really jerky and fast. That doesn't seem to have been done as effectively in this film. I don't know, but something seems different there about the movements of the infected. The only other thing I felt off was something I've mentioned already: the pace, stroke, duration of the film. Yes, I am getting older and grumpier and less patient, so would have preferred a shorter film, or at least a better paced one. The pacing seemed slightly slow. Thank you, phone, for my taste. Those complaints out of the way, 28 years later, is still a very good film, and one that's got me seriously wanting to watch the sequel when it comes out next year. I think you will like it as well. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, that is where I am going to be leaving things for now. I am going to thank you for watching this video and listen to me rattle on. I'm also going to thank you, if you've done so, for reading the blog version, the written version of this video. That possibly makes more sense. It's on Knickknacks of Peculiar under the same title. So thank you for watching and reading. But before I go, I'm going to ask you to subscribe, if you'd like, to my YouTube channel at Mr. Cuddy2977, and I'd also ask you to follow my blog, Knickknacks of Peculiar, as well. You will find a hell of a lot of movie and TV reviews, and you will also find the online written version of the daily teaser quiz. I am planning more film and TV reviews and more quizzes, so if you'd like to watch a lot of silliness, keep your eyes peeled, please subscribe, and I'll see you the next time I see you. Take care, have fun, and be seeing you.